Yeah. And then there's a wire at the top of one side out. You feel, yeah, there's that there. Yeah, mine was on, yeah.
Congratulations, I haven't seen you since.
I don't know how it winds up back here in my spine. Yeah, I understand that now.
Stephanie, can you draw me on that?
It's, I already did. Okay, everything's on.
Okay, this is the Williamson County Board of Commissioners meeting. It's April the 20th, and it's, I got 10:06. Roll call, please.
Jim Harlow,
Present.
Brent Gentry,
Present.
Ron Ellis.
Present. That's about right, well, thanks.
I guess we are, yeah.
The guns
First
are
off,
over there.
I want to thank everybody for showing up here. I do appreciate this. As you all know, we live in very challenging times. I have a hard time talking with this mask on, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to take it off. I've got a prepared statement that I'd like to read, and when I'm done, I'm sure Ron and Brent probably have something that they would like to say. At a certain time, we're going to call in Rhett, our labor attorney, to explain any questions that you may have. Rhett would be able to, if he's so kind, to be able to explain options for everybody. And we'll give everybody an opportunity to ask questions. As we all know, we live in very challenging time, to say the least. Long before Governor Pritzker issued his executive stay-at-home orders, and unbeknown to us, this nation, this state, and this county were all under attack. Until the release of his executive orders, life as we knew it continued as it always has. People would wake up in the morning and prepare for the day. Parents would drop their children off at schools and then head off to their jobs in anticipation of what the day would bring. Social events were planned, sporting events were held, weddings were planned, and people would go out to dine. The American way of life as we knew it and as we lived it continued on as normal. All this changed due to the fact that we are now under attack by a foe that no one could have anticipated. Our nation, our state, and our county are now facing a real threat. A real threat due to a virus that has now migrated to our part of the world. And due to the seriousness nature of this virus, our elected officials have taken measures that they have deemed necessary in order to protect its citizens. On March 20th, Governor Pritzker issued his stay-at-home orders implementing his social distancing rules and ordering certain non-essential businesses to close. As a result of non-essential businesses being closed, our economy has suffered tremendously with downward spirals of reported income and ever-increasing job losses within the private sector. This executive order, and in conjunction with other protective measures that have been put in place, have a devastating effect on our economy in both reported revenues and in the corresponding taxes that would have been generated. All of this as a result of the COVID-19 issue. The resulting decrease in taxes that would have normally been generated prior to this pandemic taking hold has placed many of our local government agencies in situations where they are being asked to make very difficult financial decisions. Williamson County being one of these governmental agencies. The actions that this board is asked to engage are extremely difficult in nature due to the lives that of those that it touches. In light of the issues that have already been stated, this Williamson County Board of Commissioners must and will implement the changes necessary in order to maintain the economic and financial responsibility that this county requires. Even though department heads have been implementing a rotating staff due to the governor's policy of social distancing, it's much appreciated, but you have to ask yourself, does that reduce the burden of meeting payroll? The answer is no. Even though different departments may bring in various amounts of revenue, it cannot sustain the staffing levels that we currently have when compared to the projection in revenue reduction from the various taxes that we receive. It is also not timely enough. We have all heard from department heads saying that due to the timing of all this, I need the current staff that I have to handle whatever workload that we're going through. We understand that this issue did not discriminate on the timing of our courts or tax cycles, but the question remains, how will staff be paid and for how long? Due to contracts and mandates, different departments will be affected in different ways. There are many unanswered questions that we're facing today, questions that we don't have the answers to. Even if the governor reopens the state, the drop in projected revenues will not be over in just 2 weeks. This county and all counties are going through uncharted territory with no end in sight. During this time, much will be asked from our county, and we ask for your understanding during these unprecedented times. Ron or Brent, do you have something you'd like to say?
No, not much. All I can say is that, every department head has got a job to do and everybody does a good job at it. And under these times, unfortunately, we have a job to do too. And that's to watch over the money as we always do and make sure that we have it at the end of the day. My thinking is we cannot keep paying out people to rotate and stay home. We're going to have to use what little reserve we have, it's my personal opinion, and blend it with the savings that we can get on furloughs to get us through this year. I have no earthly idea what next year is going to bring because all the numbers aren't in and we have no idea if we're getting budget. But this has been a major blow to all of us. It's been a major blow to the economy, and a lot of people are sick off of it, and it's real. So thanks for coming, and we'll just see how it all plays out. And Ron, you got anything?
The only thing I would say is all of us in here, department heads or elected officials, our number one objective and our number one obligation is to the people of Williamson County as a whole. As long as we have people in our county, which we're going to hopefully for a long, long time, that is as a group, that is our focus. That is our obligation to the taxpayers of Williamson County and the residents of Williamson County. So please keep that in mind as we talk the financial numbers and we're moving forward.
At this time, Rhett, would you like to explain some of the options that we have here?
We need you to come right up here, sir, to the golden neck for the camera.
No, I'll stay right here.
He can't hear very well, can he?
I'm gonna actually grab this off and explain. So what we've been doing and what we've been working with, as far as discussing with the labor unions, which some are present here today, and I thank them for coming, is currently some of the office holders have been operating either half staff or a little bit less with people at home on paid status. And so what I tried to do is take those numbers and look to see who was on paid status, who was at home, which signified to me that the office holders were able to still operate at the current workload that COVID allows for, and look at what that savings was. And so when you take that, the savings or the cost to the county is about $31,000 per week for the offices. Now that does not include the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department adds in another $7,600 per week, but that's due to staffing that he currently doesn't have full staff due to a couple of transfers and the inability to replace those because the training board is currently out. Now, that is just pure salary cost. That does not include the IMRF or health insurance. Now, what the county board is faced with is looking at two options. One, going in and amending their budget, at which point then it's more of a permanent cut that would affect all office holders and potentially trigger a layoff, or asking the office holders to do a voluntary furlough. So your budget currently wouldn't be touched, but the savings would come back essentially to the county and to the office holders if there was a voluntary furlough. Now, a couple of facts that come in with that. So the first question that I had was, what does that do for IMRF? Because all employees are on paid status as of today, these wages today, earned today, are reported May 1. So their IMRF participation would not see an effect unless the governor was to extend the stay-at-home order past the end of May. So today's wages count for reportable wages for the month of May, which then extends IMRF to that extent. So then the next question was, well, what does that do for the employees that are switched over to furlough? So the government has allowed for the week time frame to be absolved. So now they're eligible, as soon as they receive their furlough notice, they're eligible to apply for unemployment. Anyone who is making less than, I believe, $59,000 a year on an annual salary will actually make more money because of the $600 per week stimulus that the federal government's kicking in, sitting at home rather than being on paid status sitting at home. So the question comes in, what effect does that have to the county? So Williamson County is like a lot of governmental entities. They are a self-insured unemployment, meaning that the federal or the government allows for you to pay in unemployment insurance. And then when you have unemployment claims, the government takes care of those. Williamson County chose to go self-funded, and so they've been stockpiling their own monies away each pay cycle, just like you would for the government. The difference is the county gets the benefit of that money as opposed to the federal government or the state government. So they've got enough funding in their reserve account for the unemployment insurance to actually use that. But that's the only thing that it can be used for. So right now we've got that stockpile of money for unemployment claims, but it can't be used for general. So again, it's shifting some of the burden off of the general fund onto the unemployment fund, as well as still benefiting the employees. So then the last question that was asked is, what does that do for health insurance? And so the county board has indicated a willingness to allow for and offer the health insurance benefit still to the employees. Now, the employees would be required to pay their share of whatever that premium is. So if somebody's on family or if somebody's on individual or plus one, they would still have to pay their share, but the county would pick up the lion's share. So I think that's the best option to go for in order to save the money. If we look at just currently the last 2 weeks, that'll be almost $100,000 savings to the county. If the governor extends that into the middle of May and add another 2 weeks onto that, now we're at $200,000. The rough estimates that we figured on the loss in tax revenue is that a 10% loss, and we have no idea of how to gauge this other than to run percentages, because reportable losses won't happen for 3 months. So the loss that we received last month, we'll find out about in June or July. Same thing for next, it keeps going on because there's about a 2 to 3 month reportable backlog, as well as the state is currently operating at partial staff. So we see some of that as well. So just at a 10%, we're looking at a $708,000 loss to the budget. And that's in a revenue loss. 15% is $879,000. 20% is $1.04 million. 25 is $1.2 million. 30% is $1.39. 35 is $1.56. And a worst case scenario that we've heard out there in some of the communities of a 40% loss would be a $1.7 million. Now, that is a loss of revenue. So if we don't change expenditures and we have that loss in revenue, they don't meet. So we've got to figure out a way to kind of firm that up. This is the easy money. This is what I consider the low-hanging fruit. It's a benefit, or can be seen as a benefit to the employees nobody likes to go on unemployment, but while the government is giving that extra $600 per week, and we're able to pay for that health, or the unemployment benefit and provide the health insurance, I think that is the best option. But as everybody in the room knows, the county board only controls the purse strings. The office holders themselves have to be able to make these decisions and willing to make these decisions. And we need to have further conversations with union representatives as to what impact that has. So we do have a duty to negotiate that impact. Those conversations have begun. I will tell you, surrounding communities are also looking at the same thing as to when do we switch to a furlough status. This in no way is changing the budget or changing the workload, or is the board telling you that your workload, when you're full staffed, back to full loads, you may see, Brandon's office, Andrew's office may see an increase because right now filings are suspended. So we're going to see that, but at the current time, fees required and relied upon by Andrew's office are non-existent because the filings aren't occurring. So there's a loss there, but we're still paying expenses as though there's not that loss. And like I said, that's just a bad road to be on right now. So that's why the board wanted to bring all the office holders in and explain what the numbers are looking like, explain what the benefit level would look like towards the employees. Any questions? Yeah, Jeff.
So voluntary will not work because if a certain job is done, that person you need done, if they want to take voluntary, the other person that does it can't do the job. So I don't see how voluntary is going to work.
I mean voluntary as far as the office holders directing that these people are going to be furloughed.
Okay.
I don't mean you can take volunteers from certain offices, but there's going to be some positions in some situations where the only one person, for instance, in your office, if your GIS person says I voluntarily offer, it shuts down the GIS funding, so it doesn't really help the general fund. So every office has a little bit different scenario, and we'll have to work through those.
What kind of time period are you looking at? How long?
That's a good question. I think there's a couple of models out there. One is the model that it's going to end at the end of the month. I'm less optimistic about that. I anticipate a 2-week extension going to the middle of May. And even then, the question becomes, at what point do you come back to full staff? You've heard this faucet analogy where you slowly turn it back on as opposed to just open it up. So I don't know what that means. Again, for instance, in Brandon's office right now, criminal cases are, for the most part, suspended. But when they go back into trial prep mode, they're going to get busy. Same thing with Teresa's office. So at what point do you need to start prepping for those cases to where you need to bring all of your staff back? Andrew's office may look differently than Amanda's office. Everybody's, again, a little bit different. But keep in mind, the goal is the savings. So the more that we can squeeze out of savings here, the less we have to open the budget and do a permanent effect.
We still can see a permanent effect at the end of the season.
Potentially, because again, when you go from 10 to a 40% loss, it doubles. Well, more than doubles. So you've got to look at exactly what we need to do. You may not feel it this year in your budget, but next year's budget, you may really feel it. And that's just the reality of it. Hopefully nobody feels it, but I don't anticipate that's going to be the case.
And we're still wanting your tax bills out finally, correct?
That's the hope. So,
Once we mail out tax bills.
do what?
Once we mail out tax bills, we'll be limited to bring staff down.
Well, I think last time we talked about either being on time or the most we could go is 2 weeks later, send them out. I don't think the date's been determined. That was the last discussion. I think you want maybe a little bit longer, and we're like 2 weeks is got to be, the entities have to have their money. So, and then you're gonna get another scenarios, actually you're gonna have some fun with this, but then people will say they can't afford to pay it. So then that's gonna be his issue there. But the most would be 2 weeks later, I think, is what we talked about.
Well, maybe. I mean, you're 3 weeks behind possibly on getting the multiplier.
We did.
When we got it in.
We got the tentative multiplier, so we're good there. We just have to get send the final off here, so.
Right.
But but I think Brent's correct, and it's all a trickle effect. So the circuit, for instance, the circuit clerk fees, there's so many other fees that are generated within that filing fee that now all of a sudden we're affecting court security or affecting library. It goes on and on and on. Sheriff's Department, if we reduce that, then it affects fines and tickets. So you start going through that process and it starts to touch everything. So that's why, again, you're having a lot more conversations today, this week, about what's the difference between a furlough and a layoff. It's the most popular email I have right now on my account is, can you tell me what the difference is? And that's south of 64, including Monroe County and Jefferson County. So those counties are starting to look at this. So I don't think this conversation is absurd. I think it's a conversation that needs to happen. Yes, Williamson County has been blessed in the past with better revenues and better budgeting and planning than others, but we can't let that all go to waste right now. I think it's a combination of the savings of the easy money here, as well as use of reserves to make things work. Kevin.
Whose call is it when you need to come back to full staff? Is it the office holder or is it the county commissioner?
Ultimately, it's the office holder. But keep in mind, we're trying to prevent the board from having to go in and amend a budget. So again, any savings that can be seen by that, and you're, no pun intended, handcuffed a little bit on hiring new officers just due to the training board. But those savings will be recognized by the board when it comes budget time, is what I've been told.
One of the things you guys got to realize is, as a group, come August and September, we're going to have a much better idea of what the hard numbers are that we're going to be out. Everybody and their brother agrees that we're going to have shortages. The mayors were on TV about a week ago, and they were discussing the average thought there was 20 to 30%. And when you look at each of the communities, then the other thing that comes into play, how many businesses may not come back at all? How many businesses are going to come back at a reduced capacity? That there's so many variables here that there is absolutely no way that you can account for everything right now. But what we do know is that there's going to be some shortages. As Rhett said, what we're trying to do now is do a little bit of planning. Because when we start the budget process, and it will start right after Labor Day in September, that this next year is really going to, whatever savings we can make now in this year's budget will help us doing the budget for next year. Because county governments, city governments, we're not able to run in a deficit like Springfield, our state, and like Washington, D.C. They can run deficits. We can't. We're not allowed. We literally have to pay our bills as they come due, literally. And we don't have the advantage of being able to go out and say, okay, we're $400,000 short. We'll just borrow the money. It doesn't work like that. We can't go out and borrow money like that. And so anything and everything that we can get assistance from you guys will help us. And we're all working together. Our goal as a board is not to come in and do slash and cut. That is not our objective. The whole reason we're having this literally is to ask for your assistance and your help. And that'll help us, help all of us when we get to the budget. Because I'm telling you right now, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Next year's budget is going to be very, very, very difficult. And statutorily on the local level, on the county level, if we have a deficit this year, that has to be fixed next year in next year's budget. We're not allowed to carry that deficit 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road. Any deficit that has occurred this year has to be addressed in the next fiscal budget.
One last thing. The list of potential furloughs that we're talking about is currently no different than what is currently in operation. So you've got people currently at home on paid status that are not working from home. We have attempted to take that into consideration as to staffing levels necessary right now. If those change, or if those need to change, different than the meetings that we've had, then you've got to speak up and allow for that. But that is the basis of it. So we're not asking the office holders to do anything different than what they're currently doing, other than change them over from a paid status on the county dime to an unemployment status, which, keep in mind, as I said, they will actually be more beneficial from a monetary standpoint in doing so because of the $600 stimulus. So.
This is some bookkeeping stuff. In regards to the health insurance, the employees that are off, in the past, I mean, they give their portion to Julie. Julie then gives it to our office, and we do that. We would need to make sure that everybody was aware of that process.
Correct.
So that way it
Yes.
follows suit, because we don't want people coming into our office with checks and then having to come give them to Julie. That way she can check everybody off and make sure that that's done.
That's why we asked Julie to be here
Right.
to explain anything like that.
The other thing is, and I don't know how this will be affected, but in the payroll system, everybody has a 1 week holdback as far as an hourly employee. So even those people that would be put on furlough, technically they would receive a check, or are those supposed to be banked? So whenever they get called back, it continues to still have that 1 week holdback?
My understanding is if an employee receives wages, when they call in to certify, they would have to report those wages, which would make them ineligible for that unemployment benefit for that week.
So is that
So they would
something,
not get the extra $600 if they did it that way.
okay, is that something that you have to negotiate and that the unions have to agree to? I just want to know because, I mean, if they were off and we put them on like inactive status, they would still have a week's worth of hours and wages that could be, that we would submit a paycheck out for.
All of that we would talk with the unions about.
Okay,
My anticipation is that the unions would say, let's do a side letter that puts that aside so that way it continues the system.
okay,
You were not in office at the time that we transferred or switched over to that holdback. It used to be the county would submit payroll on Wednesday, estimate Thursday and Friday as to how many hours were going to be worked by those employees in order to make payroll up to date. And it was quite the process to get that moved back 5 days. I would hate to lose that process now and have to reinstitute that. So again,
so that's like 2 weeks.
it's a detail that we've got to get to.
Is there stimulus money available through the government? I know you see on the news all the time where it makes stimulus, supposed to have stimulus money. Is there any of that available anywhere like that?
The states are pushing for it from the federal government, but I don't think they've been successful yet. Unless this last package, there is a package they're working on, right?
There's a package they're working on, the
Yes.
CARES Act, which would allow for some reimbursement for the unemployment insurance increase or cost. This currently, I don't believe applies to the governmental entities. So there's a push with the speaker, et cetera, to try to get the next bill that has some extra SBA money in it, also clarifying that section 700 something, to allow for governmental entities to participate in that CARES Act as well. But currently, I think the goal is that the money is going to go to the governors in each state, and then those governors distribute those however that happens.
I've been in contact with Dale Fowler on that, and at this time, no one is really certain how that's going to play out. Because my question to him was, how is the money going to be distributed? Percentage and who to? So he didn't have the answer to that, but I think he's being pushed by a lot of people.
I think the problem, Sheriff, is we can't go backwards. So if we don't get it, we can't go back and make it up. If we do get it, then we can say, okay, hey, we got it, and now we have that extra. Our loss wasn't as big, so now we can do this or do that. So just trying to plan the unknown, which is.
So if you do get stimulus money later, go for next year's budget and help out with our budget next year.
Correct. That's the goal.
If we get any stimulus money this year, it'll help soften the blow we're going to have now.
Correct.
So whatever we can do now, yes, it does help next year.
I'll say this, I think Williamson County, we were smart enough to have some type of reserve set back. Of course, that's going to be absorbed pretty quick. So that's why we're here pleading to have this. And, as I sat at home, like most of us do, and I got thinking, my wheels start turning about everything. And I'm only speaking for me, I can't speak for everybody, but, hindsight 2020, if I'd known this was gonna drag on this long, we could have done furloughs from the beginning. But the anxiety level, facing how real this is and everything going through your head and have to talk to unions and this and that has got us to where we're at now. But if we could have started earlier instead of people going home and being on the payroll, it could have helped things, but it's such a process to get to where we're at today. So that is, somebody asked me, why now? Why now? It's because it took us this long to talk to everybody to get things in this position to be here today. So my thinking is that we can take this little bit of reserve, because we keep losing it every day, and blend it with this savings of people cooperating with this furlough. That will keep us alive for this year. Next year, I have no idea, but I've always said from day one, I don't want to sign off on a balanced budget. And that's it. I mean, you cannot, in our own checkbook, we can't be paying out more than what we have coming in. And this is no different. And this is a terrible, terrible time.
Nobody
How much
could,
do you have in reserve?
But I don't know now what the number is. It was 2 million, now it's probably about 1.3 or 4, it just keeps going down. And we gotta get to the end of the year.
All going out now.
Yeah.
Literally.
Literally.
Now, literally.
do you have a question, Kelly?
Since we've declared a disaster, we have actually signed up for public assistance. This all affects the payroll. So when this all, if it does happen this way, and we do have furlough, how would paperwork work with the public assistance? And when we start bringing people back, this all plays in part with our paperwork. So
Good question.
this is very important with the EOC.
Well, and my understanding on the public assistance is that you get to account for the extra expenditures due to COVID. Regular payroll wouldn't be an extra expenditure due to COVID. Well, the unemployment, potentially, I don't know.
But the 14 days of people, like the time we have off now, the COVID hours that half the staff is off now, that is accountable. We do get to include that, but what I'm saying though is we do the trickle effect or not the trickle effect, but when you start bringing people back gradually, we need to make sure we keep account of
Absolutely.
who it is. That's important for the department heads to know. All that needs to make sure to let Ashley know for sure, because he's keeping in tune with me.
Right.
As far as our paperwork goes, because that's important. Put it in that COVID. That's the whole point of the COVID on the payroll. Is that's because of the public assistance.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So if we bring back a few people, that it needs to be put under there. Does it make any sense?
And, it is good that you're keeping track of that from day one. Ashley and Kelly have been working together on this. The other variable that nobody knows the answer to this question yet, because all 50 states are all involved in this at the same time. What kind of reimbursement are we looking at? Absolutely nobody has any answers for that, because we have 425 people in Washington DC that can't agree on whether the sun comes up in the east and sets in the west.
Kelly, have they set a threshold yet? Have they set a number?
There is no threshold for this.
Hello?
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 I have a question.
Okay, could you identify yourself? Hello?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I
It's
think
not
they
like
hung
a
up.
regular disaster where you have a huge threshold. Threshold's like 3,000. It's very minimal. There is one. So it's really minimal.
Okay.
We've already hit it. But if you spend anything out of your ordinary amount that would pertain to the virus, whether it be wipes, huge amount of paper towels, antibacterial soap, an extra laptop because you have someone at home, make sure you keep someone at home working. Make sure you keep those receipts because that's all COVID response. If you need anything for your offices, let me know because I can run that through RWC. Doesn't mean I'll definitely get it, but I will sure definitely try to get it more resources. Keep that in mind. It's worth a try.
Thanks, Kelly.
Are we looking to rotate? Or are we looking just to set people off for 30 days, 60 days?
Can't rotate.
So the northern counties, my understanding from some of the northern, when I say northern, I mean north of I-80, 74. They are looking at a 2-week rotational basis. And the reason that they do that is so if you set it up in the mid-pay cycle period, you'll have 2 weeks of pay in each one to grab health insurance benefits. Due to the fact that we've got IMRF covered for the entire month of May with everybody being on paid status today, I don't believe the county has to, and I think it would be a hassle to say, let's rotate it two on, two off. I think everybody would be eligible for that benefit without having to rotate the 2 weeks. Now, if we go past the end of May, then it's something that we may need to revisit. But right now, the relief that we've received from IMRF is that it covers the entire month of May by just having wages today.
Okay, clarified paid status. So are you saying because they're working today, because we opened up payroll and the payroll dates for what everybody's submitting is from April 11th through April 24th. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't.
But the reportable wages will be May 1.
Okay.
So when Julie makes the report to IMRF, that'll be May 1st. May 1st, then we'll trigger that
Okay,
May,
okay.
the employees. You have to just work hours in a month in order to qualify.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure
Then
that we were.
Right. Then your retirement benefit is based upon your highest wage over that period of 48 months. So again, it's not your average, so it won't affect anybody from that element either.
But they've earned it, but we're not gonna pay them because we're gonna hold that back on the people that are gonna be employed, right?
Well, they have a 1 week holdback now.
Right.
So that would basically be for a prior week working. I'm just saying that if you were to let them go today and they wouldn't have,
You have 1 day on that.
they would have
cycle.
1 day on that pay cycle. That's just why I'm trying to make sure that we're, comparing it properly.
We're not gonna pay them because
No, you would pay that.
We would pay that.
You pay the 1 day, you wouldn't pay the 5 holdback.
next week is the whole thing.
We've already had the holdback week.
If nobody would have worked today, they would have been entitled to receive a
1 week's
5 days pay.
Last week's pay.
By working today, they're able to receive 1 day
Yeah.
and not affect the holdback.
If we put someone on furlough for this week. I assume that's what we're looking at, is next week starting this.
Then they would have 5-day pay cycle instead of a 10.
Yeah, and then they would have it before those as wages.
Right.
Earned whenever they're filing them.
Jeff, and we're not looking to start this next week, being brutally honest.
Do what now?
We're not looking to start furloughing next week.
When are you
looking to
We're looking to
Immediately.
immediately.
Yeah, right. I'll make sure it's clear.
It's really nice, because I don't have the people here that I did on purpose, so it would have been nice to be able to tell them Friday.
Brett, I mean,
We attempted to get people on board, but due to the Open Meetings Act, we're limited on how many people we can talk to at once and have all the board members in here. If it goes past collective bargaining, the board can't be together. And so this was the easiest element or option for us was to have a special meeting, post a notice and have this open dialogue.
What about the unions? This is already agreed on with the unions?
We've started conversations, as much as we can. But again, office holders haven't given details as to how they're gonna roll it out. So how Brandon's office is gonna utilize it or Andrew's office or sheriff. So the individual conversations with the unions reached a stopping point because I didn't have details. So, I've got recommendations as to, Brandon's office as to where he could go from a staffing level. But if Brandon says, you know what, I'm not gonna go that deep, then that's a different conversation with the union than the one I would have had based upon my assumptions.
And therein lies the issue, I think, at least with the offices, Jeff, like with us on the union side is, I can roll out a plan, but at the same time, until I kind of know where the negotiations are going with that, that's going to affect it. I mean, and secondly, and, Terry Thien and I have been in the public defender's office, been in close contact with the presiding judge. You mentioned this yourself. We're probably going to be starting things back in the court system, barring any Supreme Court order, which to my understanding is a lot of people are thinking is probably not going to happen, meaning we will get the court system up and running very soon. These are a couple offices, including the judiciary, that's going to be up and running extremely soon.
But keep in mind, every week is $40,000.
No.
So if we can parse a week off, it's
Sure,
40,000
sure.
that we've saved.
I just wanted to make sure that people knew that, and that, because it kind of went with what Jeff was saying is, we've got to wait until, the negotiations are done. And then I'm just saying, at some point though, we're already in talks of, we can't just, Terry and I can't bring our office staffs back. You alluded to this, the day the court system starts running again, we've got to start ahead of that.
I'd
So,
like to think that the governor will give businesses a week's notice before that's going to happen. We're approaching the week before it's set to expire, the current stay at home. So I would anticipate the governor's going to have some form of a press release as to whether he's extending it 2 weeks, whether he's not extending it at all. That'll give us an idea, because until the public can freely move, my understanding is the court system will still be stopped because the public doesn't have an opportunity to come. At
And
least that's how it is on
just to
collection.
clarify, the court system isn't stopped, and I just want to clarify, filings haven't been suspended, things are just getting continued and pushed back. We had 16 reports come in today.
Criminal filings aren't.
Sure, right, okay.
Civil filings.
I just wanted to clarify.
But we're still taking them. We are still working civil cases as they come in.
Oh, we were told that we couldn't do any filings for any of the civil matters.
We are doing filings. It's just, those are pushed to the side while the emergency things that need to be done that day, once those are done, we do proceed with whatever filings come in.
Okay.
They may not get the court date they're desiring, because that, we do have things that need to be pushed back, but they are still coming in.
Are the courts closed for a certain time frame from the Superior?
It's not closed.
We have a hearing on a murder case going on at this very moment, and one of my assistants is doing it for me.
Criminal matters are happening.
Criminal.
Civil
Right.
domestics are happening.
Right.
But any collections, any jury trials, civil jury trials, your traditional.
That's what we need to have.
Your
Those
money
are, those are not happening.
The money makers are what we're not getting.
But like I said, criminal court is occurring as we speak.
Correct.
10:30.
No, we understand that.
Okay. We're doing drug court by Zoom. We're doing criminal court by video conferencing. I have attorneys in and out of the jail.
It is by Zoom.
Or mostly by phone, since we can't get there right now. So this is effective immediately, guys. I gotta admit, I'm a bit gobsmacked with that, because that came as a bit of a surprise, considering I had one email last week. So I guess what I'm going to be asking is what's going to be expected, like all of us, from my office when we get there.
Well, once again, the bottom line is the bottom line. So
We can drag it out.
anything that can be done now is going to soften the blow for next year. But make no mistake about it, we will, under no circumstances, have a balanced budget. We're not going to have deficit spending. So this year, whatever we're short, this year, November 30th, 2020, will have a direct bearing on the budget that we have starting 12/1. It will. So if we're $800,000 short in this year's budget, that $800,000 will be made up next year. We'll have $800,000 less to spend. So, you can work about days. We're not, it's your guys' departments, but we're in this together. This is a group project. This isn't the three of us against everybody. We're all in this together, period. Bottom line.
You're gonna spend all your reserve and stuff first though, before you start cutting, is that correct?
We're not going to wait. We're not going to take the reserve to a zero balance. That will not happen. We're going to use some of the reserves. It's going to be blended.
So,
We're going to use some of the reserves. It will
You
be
have to
blended.
have a reserve, period.
We're
Everyone has to
not
have at least
going
6
to
to
go
12 months
back.
reserve.
We're not going to go back to the way it was when we came in
We
here
have
10
other
years ago.
mandates too.
When we had 10 years ago, when we had no reserve and we had a catastrophe, the derecho come through, and Bruce Troutman come running into our office on a Monday saying, we've got a problem. We've got $25,000 in the checking account. We've got a $250,000 payroll on Friday. What are we going to do? We're not going to get into that kind of position again. Not
Well,
going to happen.
I'll just say this, you know, everybody's got their own issues and departments, and they're gonna have their excuses for this and that. Here's the bottom line. We can drag this thing on for weeks if you want to. But when it comes down to crunch time, we'll open up that budget. We gotta do what we gotta do to stay afloat this year. We're not gonna make it this year. Not the way it's going. So we can kick the cans and keep kicking it, or we can take action. We can do it now. But the paying people stay at home, it's got to end. We've got to make up some other way to make some kind of money, because it's not coming in from out there, people spending money like it was last year. We got the comparables laying out in front of us. Last year, this year, it's black and white. Very simple math. So we can kick a can, talk about it for another 2, 3, 4 weeks if we want, but we've got to do what we've got to do for the residents of this county.
I will agree with that statement.
So,
And much like I've heard from certain, well, various office holders, that we don't quite understand everything that you do in your office, and that may be true to a point. But yet at the same time, a lot of you don't understand some of the expenses that we've been hit with lately as well. And the mandates that we must follow. You know, just last year, we spent $500,000 on a camera system in the jail. That was unexpected, much like what everybody's talking about this meeting here. We didn't plan for that. We didn't know it was going to happen. Nobody knew that this coronavirus is going to hit, and we're facing what we're facing. But we, this board, will have to do what we have to do, and we're asking for your cooperation. Nobody likes it. I don't expect you to like it. I don't like it. But we'll get through this. And but anyway, I think it's going to take a level of understanding on both parts, on department heads' parts and the board's parts, understanding each other. But we will get through this. And it's not just Williamson County. It doesn't really make a difference. But every county in the state is facing the same situation. So
Rhett, where we go from here? We're hearing all kinds of different things here about what ifs, what mights, and we gotta do this, gotta do that. So what we go here?
Well, again, the commitment from the office holders needs to occur.
Okay, at what point, let's set time frame. We've got to know a certain date, time.
Well, is this going to be being phased in, or is it, I mean, you're going to get them all done at once? I'm looking at this.
We have a list.
Only from a payroll.
Okay, so my understanding is there are 50 people currently at home that are being paid, that are not working from home. Now, that's just based upon the information that I've gathered. So when you ask, how do you implement this? You send out a notice that says you're now on furlough status. They take that notice and they're able to then go online and apply for their unemployment benefits. Okay, so that's how that process would work. We'll have some conversations with the union leadership as to the details. I know one of the things that has been the biggest question is, how long are we looking at this to last? It's the question, if I had the answer, I'd be the most popular person, because you're asking when the COVID is going to stop and when the governor's going to open up the state. But I think what the unions are looking for is some assurance that this isn't going to go into November. Now, I can't promise that, but I don't believe it's headed there. I believe that when the governor says, okay, we're going to lift the stay-at-home order, that at that point in time, we start to again have conversations with the union as to how that is going to start to be refilled. Now, that may be in some offices, everybody comes back. I know you're going to end up with taxes, so you're going to end up having to go full staff once the workload increases. Andrew's office is going to potentially have the same problem. Brandon's office, some of these offices are going to have a different fill. Okay, the sheriff's department, for instance, he still can't get the training board to authorize dues. So unless he finds an existing veteran officer to come in, he's still going to have some savings that he's incurring involuntarily. I mean, it's essentially what happens there. So like I said, everybody's a little bit different, which is why it's difficult to talk to the unions and say, it's going to go until here, because I've not heard all the concerns of other people. But I do know that we've got 50 people that are sitting at home on paid status at a tune of $31,000 a week. Okay? And that's not counting the benefits. That's not counting the IMRF. That's not counting health insurance. That's just pure salary. Salary numbers pulled off of weekly pays.
The elephant in the room question was, when? When would we start furloughing people? Letting them draw unemployment? The easy answer would be Wednesday at the latest. And here's why. If you're furloughed, you can still work. You're allowed to work under the present rules 2 days a week and still draw your full unemployment. So Monday and Tuesday this week, if Wednesday they were furloughed, they would be able to sign up for unemployment this week and start receiving it immediately, because there is no holdback period. So the real answer would be Wednesday at the latest. If they work Wednesday, then they're not going to be able to draw unemployment for this week. Those are the rules that we're playing with.
So,
Your ideal.
so I came, to meeting day hoping that we walk out of here uniformed and have an answer, okay? Now, the government is known to work at a snail pace. We don't have time for a snail pace. So Red, let's lay the guidelines out. Let's figure out what we're gonna do, and let's not kick this can down the road.
But the four of us can talk all we want. It requires the office holders to actually speak. and
What's the
say, "This
deadline?
is
We
what
can get
they're
the
gonna do."
answers from them. What's the deadline? Name it.
Well, I mean, it'd be
Tomorrow
nice.
noon?
I think the ideal situation would be to implement Wednesday, because that would allow for it. But again, conversations with the union needs to occur. Those can occur today, but I need to know from the office holders what they're looking at.
And I will say, there's some union folks, friends in here today that have, according to Red, have been very, very cooperative and understanding in this. If any of them have anything to say, you're welcome to.
Well, and I'll call them out. I mean, 773's been great. as far
Well,
as taking calls.
I'm looking at both of them.
And,
Let me say anything to say.
We've got numerous unions.
They've been great.
On the
I
phone
mean,
with AFSCME numerous times as well.
There's some misstatements, and there's, in Brandon's office and Andrews, the people aren't staying at home, they're still working, they're just not working in Portland. There's still work going on, there's still things, being done. We worked this problem in other counties 3-4 weeks ago. Worked well with them, and they're not facing the situation that you guys are in their worst financial situation. But here, there's been a lack of any real meaningful conversation. Here it is, we need furloughs, but we don't know from where or how much. So how can we operate? We need to know how much and from where.
Well, I can go through. I mean, I can tell you that, currently the
Ask for
circuit,
it repeatedly.
currently the circuit clerk's office has 19 employees plus the circuit clerk, 20. It's my understanding 5 are working. That leaves 14 people on paid status out of the circuit clerk's office. I've not heard anything different.
Are they on rotation too? So you gotta think.
They are on rotation,
You gotta think about this, because you didn't want for.
but they're on rotation every 2 weeks.
I know, but listen, we're dealing with a pandemic that none of us fully understood. We're getting misinformation everywhere. So the office holders did the responsible thing to make sure those offices still run and the whole county didn't just shut down.
I agree.
So he divided them into groups. So I just want to make that clear. Because you're acting like everybody should sit down home and get a paid vacation, and that is not the case. They're rotating to be responsible. I just want to make sure that is clear.
Understood. And if we want to continue a rotation element of every 2 weeks, we can continue that. But I think it's going to be more of a hassle to the employees to have to apply for unemployment and then come off of unemployment and then reapply for unemployment if it goes out longer than those 2 week periods.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I feel like you got the news here, you got everybody in this room who doesn't fully, the public will not fully understand how these offices are running. The way it sounds is that our members are taking paid vacation and not the case.
No,
I
they're,
just wanna clarify that.
all offices,
In public.
all offices,
No.
all offices are ran differently.
Yeah, but I just want to clarify that so that people, how that will be perceived.
And I understand. And I think Mr. Gentry stated it earlier that when this all hit, everybody was trying to scramble and figure out what we needed to do. We knew that we needed to try to separate the close working quarters, and so we needed to go half staff levels. We went paid half staff levels because we didn't anticipate it was going to go on for the period of time that it is. But now it's continued to go on. Now we're realizing what loss of revenue there is, what loss of extra expense for some people to stay at home. And so, yes, they're on rotationals, but ultimately, there are people that are not working at home that are still on paid status. And that is what the county is trying to absorb a little bit. And keep in mind, it will be a bigger benefit financially to those employees so long as they make less than $59,000. So the county looks at it as a win-win. They're able to defer some money out of the general fund by using the unemployment fund.
Randy, I said in my opening statement that I appreciated the department heads implementing the rotations to try to keep people safe, not to from exposure in implying or implementing this social distancing. But the bottom line is, you pick the department. Every department has one thing in common: they all operate on money, and the money that comes from the revenues that are generated through sales tax, use tax, income tax, personal property replacement tax, those are what we're looking at, the projections that are dropping due to the fact that most of your businesses are closed. You can't deny that fact. You can't deny the fact that businesses are hurting and struggling. Some may never reopen. Yeah, certain other businesses may be doing great business, such as your grocery stores, but the taxes generated from the sales of food are a different level of taxation than those generated through restaurants. So you can't deny the fact that we are facing a tremendous reduction in our revenues, and that's what runs all of these departments.
Yeah, I'm not denying that, but what I'm trying to say is that the perception, when you speak of it in a certain way, sounds like our members are on vacation or not, and everybody, I just want to make sure the public understands, the media's here.
Correct. We're not trying to
That would come from that.
We're not trying to put the blame on anybody. We're looking strictly as this is a business decision. We're looking at our revenues and our expenses. That's the bottom line.
And the other thing is this: if somebody is important, because we have a lot of the departments have cross training now, which is good, but you're going to have someone who may be on furlough right now, and they can still come in and do their job for 2 days a week and it not affect them drawing unemployment. So to say that one person and, there's nobody in the county that works that's totally irreplaceable. But if you need to have that person come in and they're laid off for a 4-week period and they need to work 2 days 1 week, bring them in. If you need to work 2 days another week, bring them in. They can work 2 days a week. If they work 3 days in 1 week, they will not be able to draw unemployment because they will have made too much money for that week to be able to draw unemployment. So use it judiciously. Easy for me to say. And we're not saying that you can't work, that you can't get your job done, that we're not saying that we don't want the departments to function. The bottom line is the departments are getting by now under the present status that we have because there are not as many things being done now as there was a month ago. It's a fact. And all we're asking is we're not trying to single any one department out. We're not trying to single literally no one department. This is across the board. This is every department out here. We're in this together. It's not we're trying to get somebody. It's not. That's not the case.
I mean, the field work is not slowing down. Going out and measuring up, that part of it. Us transferring deeds, drawing that stuff, GIS, that's not slowing down. We have the same amount that we would have normally.
But that's where each department head is responsible for their department. That's why we as a board aren't telling Ashley or Jeff or Andrew or anybody else, this is how many people you're going to let go. We're making a recommendation. We're asking that as a group total across the county, that there's 50 people at home right now for whatever reason, whether they're able to work or not is another story. But we're asking that when this smoke clears and the dust settles, we're asking for 50 people to be laid off from all the departments collectively across the board. That's what we're asking for. That's going to help us. It's not going to get us over the hump. All we're doing here is asking for some help right now because the hump's coming in September.
Ron, did I understand that? someone on furlough, be drawn unemployment plus the $600 that the government's promising, and they come in and work 2 days a week
Yes,
and pay their insurance and their retirement, and then still be on furlough.
they're able to be on furlough. The way the rules are today, somebody can be furloughed, laid off, just terminology. They can still work 2 days in that week, 5-day week, or 7-day week technically.
After weekly.
But they're able to work 2 days and still draw their full unemployment. The way the unemployment works, just so you know, this is an average. The state of Illinois, you have 2 forms of unemployment right now. You have the state of Illinois, the average with the state is somewhere around 350 to 500, roughly. Then the federal government has said, we're going to kick in $600 also. So there's 2 different sources of unemployment here. And that, on this average, you're looking at $950 a week to $1,100 a week is what the majority, the people that are going to be laid off, furloughed, are going to have right now. You can supplement that if they're really important and they need to come in, or if they want to work, the office holder wants to have them work, they can still supplement that with 2 additional days. And that does not affect their money coming in from the state for unemployment or the federal government. You work 3 days, the unemployment for that week is gone. That $950 to $1,100 is gone for that week. So the objective is not to work them for 3 days. If you need to work them for 2 days. And then still let them draw the unemployment. That helps all of us.
It doesn't affect the unemployment whatsoever.
No,
I don't know about the $600 federal employment, it does not affect the Illinois.
and we're assuming that the federal, if you're a business owner, you understand this, there's a thing called FUTA, Federal Unemployment Tax, started in 1972. It's got a big buildup, and businesses actually pay the unemployment. The state is the administrator of the unemployment, but the business itself is the one who pays for the unemployment. So down the road, unemployment in 2008 and 2009, when we had a recession then, businesses picked up a surcharge of 3.75% in addition to the other unemployment that they paid. That'll happen again now. When this is all over with, I expect to see businesses pay another surcharge for to build the unemployment funds back up. But that's a different issue. That's a business issue. We're talking about what happens. I'm just giving you some background as to how this money comes about. And the federal government has said, and the governor has said, we're waiving the 1 week holdback. So you don't, typically when you draw unemployment, you have a 1 week holdback. They're not doing that. If it's because of the COVID virus, and this is absolutely because of the COVID virus, you're able to start drawing unemployment immediately. So these people need to sign up. They can only work Monday and Tuesday this week. If they sign up on Wednesday, they're laid off on Wednesday, they're going to be eligible for this week and they'll still have 2 days of pay.
And the health insurance benefit that the county's willing to
Yeah.
continue. Normally on a layoff, you wouldn't have the health insurance. That's a typical negotiated element with the unions under the collective bargaining is health insurance, recall rights, et cetera. We're not doing a layoff. We're just doing a furlough. And so,
And it doesn't affect your time with IMRF. So you don't lose any status with IMRF whatsoever.
What do you have with our offers from last Thursday to accept voluntary furloughs in these offices?
Well, I think Jeff has indicated part of the problem with the voluntary furlough element to it is you're going to have some people that do that the office holder per se says, I need that person. Again, it's the office
My
holder.
question is, has that been approached? Have they asked who's deemed not as essential that would be inclined to voluntarily take a furlough? Has anybody been asked?
I've not had any further conversations with the office holders. We were waiting for today's meeting to be able to get everybody in here to talk. And like I said, it's a rough draft as far as where things are at on possibilities. It's open for additional comment, input, et cetera. I literally just went off of conversations I had with each office holder. What's your current staffing levels, and ran numbers from there.
Yeah.
So-
There's positions right now that aren't affected by contracts that we can send a letter right now, move on.
Absolutely.
And work through from there. So I wonder why those steps haven't been taken when we've been having these conversations.
Some of those have. for instance, Amanda's office and Jeff's office, well, Jeff's office is union, Amanda's office is, we've had that conversation as far as what that's looking like. And I can show you, she's on the list here for 6, so she's got 12 currently. She's doing half every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Half every 2 weeks, so some of those conversations have in fact occurred, but, and I get it. She doesn't want to say, well, I'm going to do that to my staff, but I'm not going to, but the rest of the county's not going to follow.
I get it, we understand that also, but we need a number from the office holder, from the board here, that we can then go and negotiate the impact from there.
It's got to be from
We don't
the
have a starting point to go from there.
That's what I was.
We know you need something.
Yeah, no.
What it is, and let's work together.
Hey, they've been good about it, and our information comes through Brett, okay? So they've been excellent about it, but you're right. Today, I would like to see, personally, you guys maybe sit down with Brett here and knock something out. So by tomorrow, let's say noon, we got to set a plan, guys.
But it's going to be the office holder. I mean, that's.
But we have to have.
That's
You
the
gotta have
issue.
a number, you got the
Right.
financials, you
Right.
got the projections, and the shortfall, and.
I've got the number.
And we got, just like the commissioners, it's a business decision, we need your numbers.
I've got the number, but I've got to have that conversation with
We've asked
Brandon,
for that for several.
with Andrew. And I sent you something.
Something.
That's the number I've got. Until the office holder confirms yes or no, I mean, I've not had a conversation with Teresa. But I can tell you that she's had a conversation with at least one board member that said, here's what my current staffing level is. So when I tell her, look, we've got 3 on furlough status, she may very well say, there's no way I can do that because such and such is working from home.
Right.
I don't know that.
Then don't paint this as a picture, it's an unwillingness on our part to try to work with any of this.
I don't think anybody here today, Jerry,
Information, we're trying.
No, I've been up here saying.
not
they've
a
been-
single
they've been
person
great
has
about
painted
it.
this as a union issue.
Not
This
at
is
all.
not a union
Not at
issue.
all.
This has to be an office holder.
The lack of information and the timeliness of it.
You know what I think it is, Jerry? A lot of it is this all started. I'm just gonna speak for me. The panic and the setback of is this real? And what we're gonna do, and the scrambling around trying to talk to everybody and trying to think it through, and then all the numbers start coming up, all the bad numbers are piling up on top of us. It's just a bad deal. And I would really, really, really appreciate that you guys could talk today while we're all here in the conference room, whatever. Rec can relay it. We don't need to be in there. But folks, I've been doing this a long time, and I know we're gonna leave this room today, and we're not gonna gain much more than what we are when we came in. Brett, we need by noon tomorrow, the numbers. I don't care how we get them. We need the numbers per office, so we can maybe take this started on Wednesday and get moving, or we're gonna be sitting right here next Monday and nothing's gonna happen, because I know how it operates around here, okay? We're more valuable than this one, we're more valuable. We have to work together. We're in this
Absolutely.
together. This is Southern Illinois. We fight together. We will win this battle, but we have to have some help. And that is all I am personally asking. And we can make this all done today. And by noon tomorrow, I don't care if you get emails, whatever, we need that number. And if it's not enough number, we got to go find some more. And I mean, is that reasonable? I don't know. We got to do something.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity with the office holders here.
Well, to tell you their numbers?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's-
let's go run the room. Let's hear
We
it.
need to have the number so that I can relay it back to
All
you,
right.
and as here's what we're looking at.
Excellent.
Yes, sir.
Here, just one question, I'll shut my big mouth there. Say, I'm 9 people short right now.
Right.
Say, okay, we hold off on hiring 9 people for 3 or 4 months, and I deny people days off, and I deny this, and I deny that. And I have any kind of guarantee that after this 9 months, that you're not gonna come back and say, well, you worked this long, this short, you don't need those people, and then we're gonna cut your budget for those 9 people. Can we get a guarantee?
No.
We understand that public safety is
I
one
mean,
of
not every office, not just
Uh,
mine.
well, we understand public safety, your situation. You've held off on these people for us, okay, and because you can't give up. We get it. But, you're gonna have, you also have minimum staffing, okay? We get that. It's part of the agreement. We get it. But I don't know there's a guarantee that we're gonna wake up tomorrow. I can't, honestly, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be worth millions of dollars. I really don't know what's going to bring it, but we're going to try to do everything we can. This board is not fighting against people. This board is trying to keep everything afloat. just like with my own checkbook.
Benny, one of the questions I've asked is this going to become a yearly event? I said, one of the questions that I've asked is, will this become a yearly event? We don't know. We don't know. It's never been done before. And, you know, I'm talking about the pandemic and everything.
What they know, Kelly, I've said on a lot of conference calls with you, okay? And if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But what I'm hearing, and all you can base stuff on is by the scientists and professionals, which I'm not either one of them, okay? When they open the gates, the floodgates, and people get back to work, which I think we have to get back to work, okay? Don't get me wrong, real soon, it's going to get worse.
Yes,
That's correct.
that's correct.
We're going to have more illnesses because it's going to get worse.
It will get worse before it gets better. We haven't even seen it yet.
Sheriff, the conversations that I've had with the board, they understand that the decision for furloughs is in no correlation to what office staffing is necessary to work and run the office on a full-time basis. Okay, we know that. So when you say, can I make it go with 9 right now? We know that you're doing a bunch of different things in order for that to work during this period of time. The question becomes, where's the budget going to be from a revenue standpoint down the road? And a reevaluation, if necessary, if the board is looking at reducing staffing under a normal situation, not under a pandemic situation, does the board feel like a certain office can go without one less? That hasn't been determined. Numbers haven't been looked at by the board, by myself, or anything else. Some of them may have individually looked at it, but I can tell you that as a collective whole, the conversation has not been had as to, wow, that office has way too many people. We need to have some type of a permanent reduction. This is just a furlough during the stay-at-home order because business is not as usual. Once the stay-at-home order is lifted and people are back into the general public, we assume that the office will run just the same as it was planned on being ran last November when the budget was passed. It'll continue. Now, what we've got to address is what's going to happen with that reduction in revenue, because the county was potentially planning on 1.7 million extra in funds that aren't going to be there. Now, reserves can handle some of it, but reserves won't be able to handle all of it. But we don't know when that's going to take effect, because we also don't know what's going to happen with the filings, what's going to happen with court fees, et cetera. You know, those may escalate, they may stay flat, they may still be under, but we don't know for how long.
And Red, I'd just like to clarify, we've heard a lot of talk about the stay-at-home order, but for essential businesses such as, public safety, we're talking about the court system, the sheriff, that's going to be a lot sooner than the general lifting of the order. As long as I've been, and again, I've talked to all the board, we've established all that they know, but just for the record, that's going to come a lot sooner than is Terry agrees.
But the courts are relying upon
Right.
public.
I just wanted to,
And
exactly.
I understand.
Yeah.
So the offices themselves are eligible to stay open. That's not an issue.
Sure.
But the caseload is diminished at this point in time because the courts have said, hey, if the public is supposed to stay at home, then it doesn't make sense for them now to be declared essential and go sit in the courtroom. So that's kind of the delay that's going on. And so, like I said before, no part of this conversation is dealing with office staffing levels that are acceptable in a normal situation. This is 100% pure pandemic.
And then there is my fear. Okay, so the courts open up, and I know there's some judges that simply do not want to be on the stand right now. They made it very clear because this the pandemic. And once you get all these people coming in and piling in there, that's when these are going to start escalating, these viruses. Okay, and Jerry, I know Jerry's an upstanding guy, and I value his input. I don't know if you can answer his question or not. You can't, just tell me if you can't. Marion furloughed 40 plus. Do you represent Marion? How did that go? I don't know how it all.
There's facilities that have been closed due to the government order, and there are voluntary reductions.
Voluntary.
But yeah, because a lot of people, a lot of staff people here that told me they would take it in a heartbeat because they're gonna make more money. I get it. Okay, so it's voluntary, okay.
Well, I can see people taking, say, people volunteering to take furloughs if they're gonna get unemployment, maybe get a couple days work here and now, if they know they're gonna have a job when this is all done.
Well, that's what furlough's all about. Furlough, cut. There's a big difference.
If it was a layoff, we would pay out their benefit that they've got on the books and everything else. The furlough allows temporary reductions without the permanent effect.
We are trying to furlough, but we don't want to get to that point. That's the whole point, because that is where it's heading if we don't get the furlough.
Right.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Furlough is a great deal for some.
It's a great deal.
Absolutely.
If they know they got that job when this is all over.
Absolutely.
They still got their job coming into, that'd be.
Ideally,
None of this
that's
action
it.
is taken on a permanent basis.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Oh, thanks. I'll shut it off.
You said that last time.
Brandy's got a comment, Brent.
And Ashley.
Oh, Brent, go ahead.
This might be for the office holders, but.
Brent
when
Ashley.
you guys do come back, has there been anything done as far as protection for the judges? Are you gonna put plexiglass for the bench, to the counters, to the clerk's office? They're gonna have
PVC.
What are they looking like as far as the actual?
Jeff, what are you doing in your office?
We've already got plexiglass in front, as you can see when you walk out. We started that at the beginning, so that if anybody came in, we're just sliding stuff underneath, and they're not able to,
I don't think that's the case at Circuit Park, though, is it? I've
The
actually been
the
talking
traffic
to Mike
window
about that.
downstairs is
Huh?
not
I've been
happening.
talking to Mike about that.
so we
What-
think that, those are some of the steps that we're gonna continue to take even once we open back up.
What
We need that.
do you have, Andrew?
And downstairs, well, actually, in both offices, we do not have any plexiglass in front of them.
That's public building commission.
Okay, that'd be a public building commission.
Yes, we do.
What do you have?
definitely need that.
Well, we have the same, I mean, we have the accordion.
Oh, you guys.
But if we're gonna actually, allow people in the building and accept payments, we need something like what Kroger or CVS has, where
Comes down to,
it comes down to a certain level, and there's a block, and we can open that up and be able to use all three.
okay, so.
Once again, that's the public building.
Right, no,
So answer that, that's a public building commission, and
And we've been doing pre-planning efforts already.
so she's talking to public building commission.
Taking care
Well,
of
that's not my question.
it.
To go to your point about the 2 days, that would be a payroll nightmare. However, we would make it
Absolutely.
work. We would make it work, because if that's in the best interest of every department. But the other thing that got me thinking, as 773 was talking, if these individuals are on furlough, who pays their union dues? Do the individuals pay them directly to you? Because I think right now, like, we withhold them and send them.
I don't see, that we haven't been granted any variances through international making changes on that right now, so.
I know what I'm saying though, but if they don't receive any money from us, then are they going to come into you and pay that? Are they gonna give it to us and then we would remit a check for the whole entire group to
I
you?
think that's something we just talk about down the road. I'm not really worried about the views, just when we're trying to keep people working.
No, I understand.
Generally,
This is something, but we will need a little bit of notification.
Generally, the responsibility will be that the member, if they don't have enough funds
Mhm.
in their paycheck, that they're responsible, and the union does that enforcement. So ours is just, in the contracts, it's just simply a withholding. It's not an order for the county to pay. It's not
Okay.
our obligation, it's the employee's obligation. We're just a pass-through.
So in that,
We would talk with the union. The union's
Example.
not concerned about it.
okay, they would pay that themselves, we would collect it from them.
Correct.
Okay. And then the same thing with as far as the health insurance, I guess those 2 days, and I feel like we would net that out. And then if there was any difference that they still owed, then they would then in turn, you would get that report. And so if someone normally pays $235 a month or a paycheck, then if 200 was taken out, they're gonna give you a $35 check to make it whole and then give it to us and work that out.
It's no different than workers' comp and anything else that we already have.
Maternity leave or whatever.
On unemployment, it's based on your wages. So you're saying you can work 2 days a week. I don't think that's true.
You're able to work my understanding is you're able to work half of your weekly wage. before-
And that might vary from person to person.
Shouldn't.
Well, it does if it's hourly.
Well, but if they have 35 hours a week that they're paid, and they're working 2/8.
Well, what I'm saying
Two
is you
sevens.
could screw somebody
Two
up by
sevens.
working more than two. working 2 days, because some people might not be able to work 2 days.
Well, the most
The
simple,
ideal situation would be that it would just be a furlough and you wouldn't even.
that would be the most
mess around
simple
with the 2
way,
days.
not mess with the 2 days, because
Well, it's
Like-
all
like
based on hourly wage.
Correct.
most of the folks, you're dealing with will come out ahead. We can talk about that.
Yeah, but I also represent Brandon's office.
On both sides, both sides.
The,
State's
the
attorney.
assistant state's attorneys would, yes, that's gonna be a different
Yeah, that's what
conversation.
I got you, I got you.
Because,
Salary
uh,
versus the.
You work them 2 days, they will be thrown out of their unemployment.
I got you.
I don't, we'll have a discussion. I don't believe that's the case if you work them the 2 days.
If they work only 2/5 of a week, that's 40%. That's not half.
What's base unemployment?
Well,
It
It-
doesn't vary for, it does vary.
but that's,
There's a
you're
cap
talking
on it.
about a specific situation for only 9 people.
And the hires,
That still affects my people.
yes, out of those.
I understand,
nine-
but
Out of
that's,
those 9, there's.
we
some
can
that
sit
are-
there and do the math
Some
on
that are
that.
under, some that are over, so the average is 78,000, somewhere around there. But we can have that conversation. That, again, that's my point in having to have a conversation with the office holders before I can come and talk more to the unions is, there's details within each office. Okay.
Just a few clarifying questions for practicality's sake. On the furlough notice, who needs to issue that? Just the department head?
Department head would.
All right.
County board can't.
Is there any specific contents that need to be in that?
We'll work with that.
Just, you're on furlough, and is there a notice before effective date that's required, or can it be immediate?
Can be immediate.
Right, and how do we get notice to the treasurer that, just copy him on the notice?
Again, he'll have to talk. I mean, all those little details can be talked. I mean, the board can't have the conversations, but certainly the office holders can have the conversations. So that's the difference here.
So who do we want? I'm circling back around to my same question. What's the timeline, and should all the emails be sent to Julie?
Let us work that
Stephanie?
detail out. Let's meet with the office holders, talk about specifics, see if we can come up with something. We can then have a conversation with the union, and we'll keep the board informed.
Okay, we started a while ago, possibly going around the room, picking numbers. You've got some. Jeff, how many did you have in your office that you submitted?
It's really what our location was as far as for the number. But it's not the same location that I have right now. I split my office up so that we continue to run, but that's not the same location I'm gonna have for that, so that's why I was hoping to let those people know Friday, but, I'm still looking at, 6. At present, unless that changes when I go back, with the union as far as for keeping another field person, so I may only have 5. I do have one person I'm not hiring,
Right.
so that hires on hold, so that.
So five to 6.
You look at 6, if you count the not hiring, it should be 7, depending on what I'm talking to the union about.
So,
That's what we planned.
okay, and then ask you what you have an idea on your office, what you want to do?
I mean, my proposal, especially if we're getting the tax bills out and collecting, $88 million plus in taxes, was 0, except for possibly not hiring our seasonal staff that we've had, because we've had 2.5 or 3 people that we've hired seasonal to collect.
How many full-time you got?
Including I have 5 total.
Not counting you.
5.
But you're currently working on 3s.
Yes.
See, that's the problem that we've got, is people are working on a certain case, or a certain load. And then now that we're talking furloughs, now all of a sudden we shouldn't lose anybody. So
No, I know,
that's
but
what's
also-
difficult here.
No, but you're also going to take into consideration here in 30 days, we're getting ready to send out 52,000 tax.
I'm talking about next week.
No, I understand.
I mean,
Or
I'm not
middle of
talking,
this
I don't
week.
want this to go 30 days. I want this to be done in 2 to 3 weeks.
And quite
Ideally
frankly,
with the furlough.
Well,
Actually,
I
quite
have
frankly-
I have one person working from home. I mean, Rachel has a remote computer that she's able to access everything as well. So I mean, at the most, it would be 2. That would be, that don't have a remote capacity at the moment.
Ashley,
Yes.
at this time though, we're not going to be sending out the bills. The real estate tax bills aren't even ready to be prepared yet. We're probably 3 weeks away from that happening.
I'm getting ready to do mobile home tax bills. And that's 5,200, 5,500 mobile home tax bills that we're getting ready to do.
Amanda, you said you had six? Terry, have you thought about it?
I'm sorry, I need the question again, bluntly. I have
What,
an office of 9, 10.
how many do you
myself.
think you could furlough for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever, until things are up and running? That's the question. Just go.
And we understand it's subject to when the stay at home, when the courts are gonna start.
Right.
The attorneys are in a little different predicament, kind of like, but everybody, as we're hearing, has a special circumstance. So,
Well, that's the other, I mean, also, I'm every other week is my rotation. I'm not every 2 weeks. So,
I'm every other week
you
also.
know, yeah, so,
but it's the same amount each week. I mean, I'm just trying to get to a savings per week. And
Absolutely.
every week helps. So even if it's for 1 week, it's more than zero.
no, I understand.
So,
So a ballpark, Terry,
We're rotating 50% every week.
so you're running 4?
We're running,
Six.
well, no.
3 and 3.
So, no. Well, yes, but we're dividing so that I bridge both teams. And then, of course, the attorneys are on call if they have a case that comes up and working at home. So support staff, we're trying to keep 2 each week, plus my assistant splits the week on Wednesdays. So we're there from Monday to Wednesday 1 week, Wednesday to Friday the next. And that way we cover everything that's necessary. So with that, good luck with the math, but that's how we're currently staffing.
So how many?
Again, your number is, how many do I have at home right now?
How many can you furlough?
Okay, that I still have to figure out. This is the first time I've been asked that question. Apparently, there's been a lot of conversation going on. I can only tell you how I've scheduled it at the moment.
I'm working on mine too.
How many I can furlough? We operate as 5 independent legal officers. The only thing where we all coincide is for budget. So our cases are assigned from the courtroom. I cannot have one attorney unless we do a complete conflict check covering anyone else's cases. Unlike, say, the state's attorney's office, they represent one client, the people of the state of Illinois. We represent individuals. So again, I'm not trying to be difficult. I have to think about how that can actually work before I can answer the question.
So right now we have
And
4.
I just heard the question.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
right, so
please
right now we
bring
have
it
4. Can you give us answer by noon tomorrow?
I'll work on it.
But for clarification, Terry, you've not received any less notification than anybody else.
Fair enough. I appreciate that.
But did you email, didn't you?
Yes.
I had an email saying there's going to be an issue of voluntary furlough and how's your staffing, and that's what I gave you last week.
Hmm.
And I've not heard of that.
Andrew?
Conceivably, right now, I would say I would need at least half. While we had a smaller staff at the beginning, I mean, that was kind of, we did that on a whim, really, because nobody knew what was happening.
No,
Nobody knew what was going
absolutely.
on, and it was for the safety of my people, and we quickly learned within, a week in, that wasn't enough. There wasn't enough people. But since we already had the rotation set, I left it like that. I have asked Rachel and Amy both to come in more frequently. And while Rachel was at home, she's been working from home. So any weeks that she's not been on, she's been doing a lot of work remotely from home. So I wouldn't say that she's actually been off this entire time. Conceivably, I'd say I would want, myself included, 10 people.
So that would leave how many? I don't mean that.
10. But additionally, like I did tell you guys, we have 2 people that I have not rehired. We have one that quit March 4th, what day?
17.
March 17th. And we had one that was the end of February. And we were kind of in the process of getting resumes and things when everything hit the fan. So as of right now, I'm not rehiring those 2 at the present state. Once we're back up to full staff and, things open up more.
So out of
regularly,
out of that 10, 2 of those are the no hires.
No,
So
technically, we have 22 people if you want to count the 2 no hires. I'm saying 10 bodies.
So that's 24. Okay, done. We're trying to clean that building over there.
But as soon as this court system opens back up, there's no way I can operate with 10. I don't see how we can. When everything starts flooding in again, there's no way.
So
I just don't see how we can do
we
it.
have PD, circuit clerk, state attorney.
So we have IT.
PD,
No, state-
PD,
which we said-
PD.
I know, I'm just giving you the other ones.
Oh, okay.
What about the
IT,
state?
which we have one.
All right,
EMA, we have one.
all right.
We
Recycling?
had this, recycling, we have one. We don't have, Judge Blyer here for judge's secretary or bailiff.
Animal control, did you work on that deal with the,
Animal control, we can't do anything without union cooperation because they've got minimum staffing at 2.
I know, but Terry's getting ready to,
I know, but again, that leaves us with minimum staffing of 2 that the union would have to
Okay.
to get in. Then we've got the sheriff's department down 9.
What was the answer with the state attorney's office?
Brandon and I are gonna talk about that.
Okay.
There's some specifics there that we've got to work through.
So do we plug in Benny's 9 into this factor of
We
numbers?
did into the 38,000, yeah.
So it'll be 24 plus 9, plus the 1 to 1 to 1.
Yeah,
What do we
Benny's
get?
9 was 7,700,
What do
a
we
little
get?
over 7,700.
76, 74.
Brett, I gotta ask a question, you've got a figure there, but if we're doing it, say I'm working in one office and some of the higher paid, more senior people want to take a voluntary furlough, if you're working a dollar amount, does that not affect that dollar amount, that number?
My number,
I mean,
yes.
to me, that's what I need, I need a number, I don't want even a number of people, I want a number of a goal you're trying to get, because, you know, we may be able to address this.
This is how we get it.
Well, we're
The
really,
goal is as much as possible, in all honesty, because we don't know.
All honest.
No, we just don't know. We don't know if you can tell me that it's gonna be a 10% reduction versus a 40% reduction, I can give you a better number, but nobody can give us that number. So at this point in time, just off of the numbers, looking at the lowest seniority on a furlough basis, it would be a savings of 38,000 a week.
And the bottom line is.
700,000 at a minimum of, on at 10%.
That's what I'm saying, when you're calculating the numbers, I'm saying, like, when we're looking at, we've got some more senior employees that they wanted to do the voluntary furlough, for instance, they're scared to get sick.
Right.
Or have cancer, you know, we've got a few special issues, and that's why it's so important that we, you know.
And we can work with those numbers, but we gotta have that from the office holders.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
and and she brings up a good point. And the other thing is, for years, audit findings have been that they want cross-training to be done. We're seeing it right now, why that's so important. And just because based on what Brandy said is the numbers and who's got cross-training, who's been there the longest, that's how you get your people.
and I know you're looking at Wednesday like, geez, that's quick. But keep in mind, the decision to go half staff happened overnight. I mean, it literally happened that quick.
Well, and it
You
happened.
can make it happen, it's just you gotta put your head to it and do it.
It happened over.
In order to institute it, I mean, you know.
It happened overnight, but it was also on every other week. Then it became, 5 or 6 for every 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks, and so it started one way, and then it went shoo.
So if we can get out of this meeting and I can have conversations with the office holders while they're all here, that would be probably extremely helpful.
So we're at 36 right now, is what I've got.
With 2 questions. He's got to have conversation with the state attorney's office.
Correct.
And we're working on that.
And Terry.
Correct.
15 minutes. Press 1.
And we still don't know what the voluntary is gonna be. If somebody that's,
Okay. So when can we have these answers, Rick? Today?
let me talk to the office
Okay,
holders
all
and
right.
Okay.
it's, that's what we do.
Okay.
So do we need to, just adjourn from this meeting? Or
You'll have 10 minutes.
More questions?
Let's take, okay, so let's recess about 10 minutes, because we got some other county business to talk about. And everybody, whoever you need to talk to, you can talk to. If you don't need to talk to, can go back and, I guess, right?
Jeff has a question.
I do too.
Clarifies the income that the county is going to receive from the selling of the land.
I'm sorry, do what again? What's your
We
question?
are going to get some extra income, we wrote down, though, is that correct? From the sale of the land that we sold.
Well, the sale of the land was the purpose of that was because we were $350,000 short in the governor's last minute decision to withhold the marijuana tax, sales tax revenue from the county. So 2/3 of that money was earmarked already to cover the shortfall of the $350,000. Because if you'll remember, December 30th of last year, the governor in his infinite wisdom decided to keep all of that sales tax revenue until November of this year.
So we do not get the full percentage of the of marijuana July 1. That's when we get it.
And it'll be-
They change it on New Year's Eve, I got a call, okay? That July 1, we won't see that money for 2 to 3 months because you gotta go through all the process and the time it trickles down. So that's kind of a push for this year. So we scrambled to sell land to make up that hole. So it's just I don't know. All right, so Brad, you know who you need to talk to?
The only
Okay,
other-
let's recess, Jim, and about 10 minutes.
The only other thing that I want to bring out while we have all the elected officials here and office holders is that many years ago, we set it up to where the elected officials would have an annual raise. With all of this that's going on, I personally have talked with all of the different office holders, the elected officials, and we need to have a discussion seriously, because it has to be done before the end of May, where those increases are frozen going forward. And so I've talked with everybody, but this decision has to be done imminently, because it has to be done 6 months before the election in November. So that conversation will be happening, and it will be happening very earnestly, immediately.
Even for the ones that are getting reimbursed for the salary?
Even the ones who are getting reimbursed from their salary, yes.
Okay, we're good? All right. We're just gonna dismiss for a little bit, or?
We'll just
We're
take a
just gonna-
recess.
I've got
I make a motion, we
I
take
talked
a
about Tim Barnett and that land.
Okay.
Well, I can do it
Make a
now.
motion.
I make a motion, we recess.
They're all even. It's real quick. And Tim Barnett, we got that 4 or 5 acres, you know, that was kind of sitting out there.
Mhm.
I thought we added that in to somebody's acreage, didn't we? That front, we pull it back in?
No,
Okay, the question is simple. We want that farm, go ahead and let Richard farm it?
no, we said no. When we did all this, we were gonna let the landowner decide if they wanted to do that, because Tim, he hadn't said he hadn't bought any fertilizer or nothing.
But, so that's what I'm saying. I thought that 4 or 5, 6 acres right there was included. Damn, I thought we put that.
I just wanted to make sure that I knew.
If it's separate.
I'm not sure what acreage he got or whatever.
Well, what the question is Tim called last night, and Richard Hayes called today, and he's putting the whatever seed, whatever you do. Otherwise, it's gonna be just bushes.
Richard Hayes, no. Richard Hayes, unless Tim wants to work with him.
Yeah.
He is.
But we told the farmer that he wasn't going to do, he hadn't bought nothing.
Richard Hayes is doing all Tim.
I know, yeah.
Then that's on Tim.
Okay.
Right.
But
We don't have nothing to do with it.
Tim doesn't think he owns that 4 or 5 acres.
Right.
What 4 or 5?
Okay,
We need to look at the map.
Here's what I did, bottom line. I told Richard to go ahead and get ready for Tim.
So,
said, go ahead.
it's
We don't want
either
that put in the bushes,
We might
so
even
we'll
put
work
it,
it out.
you know,
Richard says he's still under contract.
in the drive up.
No.
Maybe
No.
put it in, you know, right in there.
Anyway, it's not big. That's all we're saying.
Oh, I gotta see his map.
Yeah.
I do
We'll talk about that
too.
later.
What 4 or 5
So then
acres
that
you're
way
talking
we're not,
about, but that farm, if it's
We're not
Richard
taking
Hayes,
it, bringing it up to
he
you,
had-
and you look
he
at it
wasn't-
like,
he
okay,
wasn't-
what
And
is
there's too
this
many people here to call Tim, but we'll call Tim.
okay.
It's not a big deal.
And if you're net.
Okay, so-
Are you closing the
Yeah, we are. I'm done.
Do we need to wait, do we need to recess it to give them a chance to talk so we can come back and talk about it?
I'll go ahead.
I think we do need to recess.
I think Rep. Richard can talk to it later.
You want,
Well, no, Rep's got to be with me at 1 o'clock.
I think we need to recess.
Well, Fred's got you said he's got another meeting at 1
Well, I
o'clock.
sure got labor negotiations.
and then anything over and above
Okay.
that.
Brad, should we
Then let's just go
recess?
ahead and adjourn then, because he's not gonna have time.
Should we recess or adjourn?
I just talked to Brandon.
Okay.
Let's recess.
Recess.
Okay.
I make a
I'll make
motion,
a
we
motion
recess.
to recess.
All right.
2 minutes.
I make a motion, we
You have
recess
to say till winter.
till,
A few minutes.
we'll just.
Anybody on the phone,
recess
the meeting crew all over.
Until we can, to meet with the numbers.
Is there anybody left on the phone?
All right,
Yeah.
Ron Ellis made that
Who's this?
motion. Who's second?
Greg, Who's this?
Who's second?
Greg, okay, we're pretty well done. We're just gonna
Need a
wait and hear what,
I'll second it.
Brett has to say, so
Jim
we're pretty well
Marlowe?
done with it.
Yay.
Brent Gentry.
Yeah, Okay.
We'll recess.
okay, we'll talk at you later.
See you.
Nice, bye.
Recessing.
Who's on there?
Yeah.
I mean, I can unplug it.
I would stop it. Well, they were just recessing in case they need to talk to, him again,
sorry.
but I don't.
Ustream link. Just the county website. That's what's happening. The live streams, you go to the county website and click on the Ustream link.
Okay.
It's not working there, but it is working on the YouTube live stream.
You got the tape.
Well, afterwards, it'll all be
Thank you, guys.
submitted
Yeah,
anyway.
Bye, Brad.
See you, Brad.
I'm gonna go grab Amanda, that's all.
Ron? Okay, 12:06. I make a motion to come back into,
We gotta wait for her.
always.
Need to be able to count the votes. You guys can't count that high? Gotta wait for Amanda.
I can't go past 3. Never could.
Good job.
You ready?
Yeah, so I was just telling her how hard it was.
All right, I make a motion to come back into session 12:07.
Second it.
Ron Ellis,
Yay.
Jim Marlowe,
Yay.
Brett Gentry.
Okay, Rhett?
All right, so I've not had the conversations with the union yet. We've got, circuit clerk's office thought there could potentially be 9 furloughs. The state's attorney's office indicated that he thought he could do 3 assistant state's attorneys, 3 support staff, and 2 grant people.
6, 7,
So
8.
8. As far as that went, we had originally indicated a potential of 10,
Mhm.
so not too bad. And depending upon, all the office holders wanted to open up voluntarily to people first. So there's a potential that they could actually hit a higher salary level or higher hourly rate level than
Correct.
what we had planned on.
Right.
The judge's secretary and bailiffs, Judge Blyer was gonna go back and talk to his staff to see if there's anybody that was willing to voluntarily do it.
Okay.
His number is a, I don't wanna say insignificant, but it's a small number.
0 to 2.
It's about 1,100.
Sure, we understand.
The county clerk had indicated 6. The assessor had indicated 6, potentially 7. The treasurer's office indicated 1 for sure, possibly 2.
Mhm.
Was gonna again check to see if there's anybody that was voluntarily willing to do so. The difficult one is truly the public defender's office. She made a lot of good points as far as that went,
Mhm.
that you can't have one public defender cover for the rest of the public defenders. So like in the assistant state's attorneys, Philip could cover for Brandon, or cover for John, or cover somebody else, may not know everything that's going on in the case, but could at least be that body.
Because they're for the
So it's
state.
kind of cross-training,
The public
basically.
defender can't do that because you could potentially have a crime that's got 3 separate defendants,
Mhm.
all related to the same incident or same case, and you can't have one public defender represent all 3. Each one of them gets their own separate
Right.
public defender.
But they have support staff.
They do have support staff. So she was going to look to see if there was any way to finagle the support staff. She thought she might have 1 or 2 that would be voluntary, but she would need the cooperation of the attorneys willing to do the support staff work of paperwork. So she was going to check as far as that went. So that's,
We're at what count?
well, we're at,
Somewhere around 42, 44, top of my head.
$33, not counting the sheriff, but if you add in the sheriff, we're at 42, and then we still don't know about the public defender.
Or the judge. Or the judge.
What was it?
Or the judge.
What did you say with the state's attorney's office?
3, 3, and 2. So 3 assistant state's attorneys, 3 support staff, 2 grants.
And so we're at what number again? 40?
42 county sheriff's department.
And originally, we were talking 50?
You gotta get attorneys that have little kids.
Well, you can look at it this way. It's a start. We said at the very beginning that this is just a Band-Aid.
Well, and
Yeah, long.
I also want to point out that, for instance, in the circuit clerk's office, you may have a mid-level person that is at 40+ thousand, as opposed to what we had budgeted, which was the bottoms, which were, the 26,000s. So, there's a savings there depending upon who it is.
Mhm.
So you may actually get the same amount of money
That's right.
based upon who
Mhm.
actually goes out.
And that's what Brandy was talking about, right? That's correct. That's right.
Mhm.
But I think.
So what do we do next? I keep pushing for time because we need to hit the number.
I understand. So I'm going to contact the unions and say this is what we've indicated is going. The biggest question that they're going to have is what is the time frame that we're looking at? I think the consensus was a concern by all the office holders that this was somehow permanent. I reiterated in the individual meetings as well, that this wasn't a permanent thing. This was while there's a restrictive order in place, whether that be a judicial restrictive order or whether that be a governor issued restrictive order. That's where it's at.
Well, let me ask you a question, and you said something about the office holders, but it's up to them, they're gonna bring back everybody immediately, whether they need it or not. So what about this phase in of some at a time?
Well,
I'm telling you, this is going to get worse before it gets better.
I understand, but for instance,
I'm sure it will.
the Supreme Court has an order out that is restrictive of court proceedings through May 4th. We've not heard whether or not that's going to get extended or not extended. So that gears everything up earlier for the court system, potentially. I can't imagine that the Supreme Court has one to the 4th, that the state's not going to be out there until the 4th. But again, that's the fact that that's just one more piece that we don't have to this puzzle as to what time frame are we looking at before everything gets turned loose.
Heavens, no.
As more and more rallies are being held and people are defying stay-at-home orders in other states,
Yeah.
it's
They're all
just a
gonna
matter
get
of
it.
time before it
That's
gets here.
Yeah.
Then what happens to
I wouldn't
the
want
pandemic?
it like that.
When that happens, I can't tell you. You know, because if there's a crossover into St. Louis and St. Louis is hitting its peak and we've got Illinois people going to work over it, it's all interrelated.
Yeah.
There was the business journalist for the St. Louis Post. I read his thing today, and this is the metro area of St. Louis. In 2 years, from January 1 of 2008 to December 30th of 2009, when we had the recession then, there were 82,000 jobs lost in the metropolitan area of St. Louis. He's looking at, by June 1 of this year, 84,000 jobs being lost in the metro area of St. Louis. That's just one region.
Understood.
But getting back,
We're not having that conversation as far as permanent losses. We're
Right.
just looking at furloughs.
right. But let's not forget that a lot of these office holders, I won't say, well, some office holders have a considerable automation fund that they could draw from.
And there was talk of that in the individual meetings of ability to potentially bridge.
Yeah.
But you also have to look at the qualifications for use of that.
I understand that,
So
yes.
You've got to work hand in hand.
Exactly. No, I'm
For
aware of
instance,
that.
Treasurer's office indicated that there was some automation there that
Yes.
potentially could be utilized. You know, so anything to relieve the taxing on the general fund. But you want to still stay within the
Sure.
parameters of use.
And it won't take long before the automation fund would be wiped out too.
Because your budget already accounted for use of some of that automation fund for employees. So you
Right.
can't, again, you can't deplete that fund.
Sure.
And then, because eventually it's going to circle back to the general fund. Maybe not this year, but next year or the following.
I understand, like I said before, that a lot of these office holders generate revenues, but it's just that the time frame, it doesn't generate it fast enough or significant enough.
Well, we just don't know what that reduction is going to be.
And we still don't know what the reduction is going to be, but we've got the projections. And
So we've had this camera, am I on there now? Or am I?
25.
Okay, so we gotta go to another meeting. So we got, anybody listening, you have a question, you can call that number. You got 5 minutes and then we'll close the meeting. We gotta get.
12:16.
So starting right now, if you got a question,
12:16.
you can call in. And Jim will start the watch, the timer,
5 minutes?
for 5 minutes. What's the number again?
998-2135.
998-2135.
Yeah.
And then the access.
Access codes.
1599.
1599. Time's ticking, 5 minutes.
You know,
So,
Pound, yeah.
I wish we did have a crystal ball and could look into it and
well, we'd be
see
a millionaire.
what we're looking at down the road. But the one thing that's the most pressing in this whole thing is that, no, we're not singling out one department. We're not looking at one department. We're looking at the county as a whole. And trying to make decisions accordingly. And there's a lot of moving parts of our county. You know, a lot of different departments. That's why they're different departments. Each have their own function. But collectively, we have to all function together within the economic means that we have of the money coming in. And, you know, it's not like we can go to the taxpayers and say, oh, well, we're $400,000 short. We're going to increase taxes $400,000.
Correct.
That won't happen.
Well, it can happen because we're not allowed to do that.
That was my point. I didn't want to bring that up in the meeting, but now that you brought it up, it doesn't really matter. But it's because we're under a PTEL. We're a PTEL county.
I was gonna say it earlier too.
Yeah. And we have our limitations with PTEL as to what we can do. And so that's not an option. Statutorily, you brought up the point that we can't borrow money. So we have a set amount that we have to work with, and we're asking for compliance from everybody. And we don't like it, just like they don't like it.
And I can't, you know, to say you haven't lost sleep over this would be a lie, because this is eating me up. But I can't comprehend why, and it didn't happen, but office holders would not want to see the big picture of trying to help us now versus us having to come in and open up the budget, slashing money, and that's the permanent that's the permanent layoffs. And I can't, some of
The biggest fear that I believe occurred was that somehow this furlough was going to show the board that they could operate with less staff and that they would get cut.
They can't under these times.
Even if they participate now, that they will get cut ultimately down the road. I mean, that was the same thing with the questions from the union, from sheriff.
Sheriff.
You know,
Yes.
what's this mean long-term? Because I can't go forever like this type of situation.
Correct.
And I understand the board's inability to make any promise at this point in time, because we don't know how deep the cut is yet. We just don't. We're still assessing how bad financially this is going to impact Williams County. Until
Well,
that data comes in.
And as the governor said last week, last Wednesday, he was talking about financial numbers. I thought it was interesting. The same day we're talking, he's talking too. Of course, their numbers was $2.7 billion this year, $4.6 billion next year, and another $800 billion on top of it if he didn't get his tax increase. And they're already looking at what the downfall is going to be. And that's what's going to be difficult, is we're going to have the hardcore numbers of this year, what we're going to be down, and we'll have that idea by September. But what are the numbers going to be for next year? Look at the business. I already know, and you guys do, I'm sure, already know businesses that are not going to reopen when this is over. So there's going to be less people employed.
That's another factor on our
And
plate.
so less revenues coming in.
And less people paying possibly property taxes.
And you know what? Here's the other thing, to feed off of this right here. So let's say, hypothetical, everything opens up next Monday. Do you really believe for a minute that people are just going to rush out in droves to restaurants, stuff like that?
No.
No way.
I think a lot of people
No way.
are going to have enjoyed to some degree the amount of time
Slowing down.
just slowing down their lifestyle and staying at home and cooking more and everything else like that. And but on some of these numbers, and I know, and no slam on Ashley or anything like that. I don't mean this by any means, but he gave me the report that he's getting ready to send out what was it,
5,200.
Yeah, like collecting $88 million worth of
Well, the
property taxes.
5,200 was for the
Correct, but the thing of it is, that's hypothetical if you collected every penny of it. And the bottom line is, you're not going to collect every penny.
Well, we actually do collect every penny of it because we have an agency out of Belleville that picks up the difference. So let's say, for an example, we have 10,000 parcels of property that don't get sold at the auction. This entity comes in and pays us and gives us the money for that. Now, if that doesn't get reclaimed, then down the road, 2 years down the road, we may have to come back and rebuy that from them. But initially, we collect 100% of all that money.
All right, well, 5 minutes is up, so I
Well,
guess.
it's not been an enjoyable meeting, but something had to be done, so I'll make a motion to adjourn at 12:26.
I'll second that.
Ron Ellis.
Yay.
Bert Gentry.
Yay.
Jim Marlowe.
Yay.
Fred, is it 1 o'clock or 1 o'clock?
Your clock's off by 5 minutes.